I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. So, as promised, we're going to be kicking off today's episode talking about Trump's speech in New Jersey, just a little recap about what was said, and then we're going to jump into a longer story about some children in Colombia who survived 40 days in the jungle alone following a plane crash. They are such heroes, so inspiring, and honestly, they're bringing a nation together around their story. And then we're going to end off talking about the storm that is set to hit the lower half of the United States, sort of the eastern corner, because it's set to be a very severe storm. So I want to make sure you guys know about all of that. Let's start with Trump. So like we said, Trump was headed to New Jersey to a property he has there following the court appearance in Miami. He gave a 30-minute long speech from his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, and the speech was incredibly typical of Trump. It was rambling, full of resentment towards Joe Biden. In fact, a lot of the speech, a huge chunk of the speech was focused on Joe Biden. But he did, of course, rant about Hillary Clinton and her emails, the FBI, the news media, and a lot of other characters he will typically place blame on too. He also ranted against Jack Smith, though, who is a new foe of his, the leader of the investigation against him. Trump said of Jack, quote, "He looked like a thug, but he was trembling," end quote. And then he went on to say, quote, "This wasn't his territory. He feels much more comfortable in the inner sanctums of the Department of Injustice, where he can stand in his room and scream at people. He is a raging and uncontrolled Trump hater, as is his wife," end quote. Woof. But Jack must have known that this is what he was getting into when he signed up to conduct this investigation, because Trump always will make whoever is leading an investigation against him his enemy. He then furthered the idea that he had won the 2020 election, claiming that he caught Joe Biden's campaign spying on his campaign. The speech ran into June 14th, abutted June 14th, which is actually Donald Trump's birthday. He turned 77 years old, and he's in more trouble than ever. So next up, I obviously do want to issue a content warning here. This story involves a plane crash, children, and their survival in the Colombian jungle. So, Colombian children who survived the jungle. Let's get into it. A group of 4 kids survived not only a plane crash alone, but they survived 40 days lost in the Colombian jungle by themselves. To me, they are completely heroes, little badasses. I cannot even fathom how they did this. They are so brave. And now it has come out that their bravery didn't start there. You see, these children explained to authorities that armed militia groups had been taking over the village where they lived, and they were forcing children to become part of the group and commit acts of violence. Because the family feared their children would be recruited next, they boarded this tiny plane in an attempt to flee the area. 3 adults on the plane were killed in the crash, but the 4 children on the plane, the oldest being 13 and the youngest not even being 1 year old yet, they survived. The 13-year-old Leslie led her younger 3 siblings through their time in the jungle. She helped them to find food, water, build a shelter, and keep them hopeful that they would be found. There are many, many dangers that are specific to the Colombian jungle, whether that's poisonous snakes, plants, or spiders, big cats like jaguars, crocodiles, rushing rivers, heavy rains, severe darkness, or even huge bears. Children, though, in the native areas of Colombia are actually taught how to live in the jungle from a young age. So Leslie had probably gained solid survival skills by age 13. But that doesn't mean that 40 days was an easy feat on their own. They took a plastic bottle from the plane and used that to actually collect rainwater for drinking. They ate flour from the plane and seeds from the forest that the oldest knew were safe. The area led a search effort that they called Operation Hope, and it was actually funded by the government. The military got involved in finding the children. And finding them alive was actually such a celebratory moment for a community that has experienced nothing but devastation for a long time. Further, it's calling attention to the extreme gang violence that is going on in Colombia, if you can call it that. It's these paramilitary groups, but hundreds of people showed up to look for these sweet babies in the jungle. They found the plane crash first and recovered the bodies of the 3 adult passengers who had died, but the children were still nowhere to be found. The rescue teams even played messages from the children's grandmother on these loudspeakers, telling them to stay put and wait for the search teams. They dropped down flyers and food to them from helicopters, but the children kept moving anyway, and at first they didn't really know why. They think now that the children may have been afraid that those searching for them were part of this violent militia who was still trying to recruit them. Once they were located, the children had only been less than 4 miles away from the crash site the whole time. Once the children got to safety, got fluids, and some of them were reunited with their father, more details began to emerge. It seems that their mother probably survived about 4 days in the jungle with them before succumbing to her injuries. It is assumed by the family that she maybe asked them to leave her once she knew that she was dying. The 2 youngest children had their birthdays in the jungle, which this was... Sorry, guys. As mom with a baby here who just turned 1, that was the hardest part to read because the youngest turned 1 in the jungle right after her mom died. Sorry, guys. You know me, I'm a crier and we feel things here on News du Jour. We're not going to gloss over really emotional things in these stories. Anyway, the children of this area of Colombia really feel that they've been completely abandoned by the state, which was supposed to have run these types of groups out by this time. But this search effort's success actually is bringing people together. They really rallied around this common goal of rescuing these innocent lives using a combination of traditional indigenous methods with military techniques in order to achieve this joyous outcome. While the children will no doubt need a lot of love, support, and healing, both physically and emotionally, let's hope that this whole ordeal helps to bring healing and change to the nation of Colombia as a whole. Okay, and last up for today, severe weather is headed towards the southeastern United States. So more than 70 million people are set to be affected by severe weather moving through the southeastern portion of the U.S. By the time you guys hear this, a lot of this will have played out already, but there may be a second wave coming. Looking at the map of the storm on CNN, it appears to spread from eastern Texas on over through the Carolinas, and it will go as far north as Tennessee, but towards the south, the lower part of Florida will not be affected. Essentially, it's hitting the deep south. The areas that are most affected, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, they are at a 4 out of 5 in terms of the severity of this storm. This has been a very hot June, one of the hottest on record, and with it will come bad storms. Tennis ball size hail is expected, flash flooding, damaging winds, and more. Of course, as we always say, if you live in this area, please tune in to local weather channels and follow the direction of local officials. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "A leader is a dealer of hope." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review or shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us be able to keep creating the news du jour. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfree media. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram and just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour. Broadcasting from Oklahoma.